So maybe before we kick off and also introduce Vojin, maybe a quick introduction from your side.
Yeah, so I'm the Chief Digital and Information Officer at Aer Lingus, and I also sit on the IAG Tech Management Committee, which is the technology function across the IAG group. So I'm responsible for technology and digital execution across Aer Lingus. And over the last number of years, we've been really setting out to transform ourselves into an agile, lean delivery organization that was in a much better position to respond to the needs of the business. And that has actually, of course, served us very well over the last 12 months. But payments transformation was one of the first big transformations we took on. And it's one that we've almost completed and we're very proud to talk about.
Okay, well, looking forward to that. Vojin, welcome. How are you today?
All good, Paul. Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Okay, and also from your side, I mean, I know you until recently as part of Vojego, but I think something changed in the meantime since we last met, so please elaborate.
Yeah, so maybe intro from my side and then from the Endava side. So as I said, firstly, thank everyone for joining the session. My name is Vojin Rakonjac. I'm a travel payment specialist. As Paul said, from the last couple of World Aviation Festivals, you would know us as a company, Vojego. I met Paul through Vojego, I met Aer Lingus through Vojego, and last year we were acquired by the company called Endava. So Endava is an IT solutions company, and basically Vojego is now a travel unit within Endava. And what Endava focuses on is three key areas that are important for airlines, which is basically logistics, travel, and payments. In logistics, it's about airports and moving things around. In travel, it is about airlines and moving people around. And in payments, it's about working with a lot of different payment companies that gives us this holistic view of travel payments, basically.
Okay, well, thanks for that introduction. So let's have a look at Aer Lingus. Dave, maybe you can enlighten us, can shed some light on the challenges that Aer Lingus was facing, and how do you, as basically the lead of the program, look into this, and how did you reach out to Endava, and how do you get started?
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, so like many things in Aer Lingus and in the airline industry, it all starts with our PSS. Our PSS is a system called Astral. It's a fantastic piece of engineering that's 50 years young, and it's still the backbone of the airline today. It's incredibly reliable. It's incredibly cost efficient to run, but it's a little more challenging to make sing and dance in a digital world. It requires a little bit more abstraction and orchestration to make it do the things we wanted to do today, because of course it was never designed to do those things. And payments is a great example of that. Astral doesn't support XML or any other modern payment format that is kind of the minimum criteria that any PSP would support today. So we worked with the PSP over 20 years ago to build a bespoke connector into Astral, and that served us well. But of course, it also creates a major point of failure, both from a commercial perspective and from a technology perspective. Commercially, that is the only PSP we can work with because it's the only one that can plug into our PSS. And obviously, from a technology perspective, that PSP owned the connector, and we were dependent on them to make any changes to it. So our ability to continue to take payments was actually very well wrapped up with that, very reliable PSP provider, but nonetheless, it didn't give us many options. And over the last number of years, Aer Lingus has been driving more and more revenue through our digital channels, through our direct channels. So you have this bespoke connector that's supporting, 1 billion, 2 billion euro of revenue every year. And that's something that we really needed to get ahead of. I think there was a confluence of problems. You had the regulatory stuff coming through. You had PSD2 regulations and you had 3DS. Then you had the business requirements. So for example, we launched our loyalty program a couple of years ago, Air Club, but we weren't able to take Avios payments as an Air Club member. So you're not able to use the IAG currency in Aer Lingus on Air Club because we couldn't accommodate those payments in Astral. And equally then, new forms of payments were coming along, such as Apple Pay, that we wanted to be able to offer. And we had an eye to the future as well, things like IATA Pay. We wouldn't be able to offer that unless we did something about it. So it was a great example of time to do something.
Okay, and this is all about technology and making it work end to end. And from an organizational point of view, was there a mindset change required to move away from the legacy setup to a complete new setup that would be future-proof for you?
So I think we're very clear that over time we need to abstract functionality out of Astral, and someday we will need to move on from Astral. Payments was a great use case for that. why not create an abstraction layer that takes all of the payments functionality out of the mainframe? And as far as Astral's concerned, we're actually still feeding in what looks like a credit card number. Of course, now it's just a random tokenized set of 16 digits, but we didn't have to change many of the flows in Astral, which avoids putting more money on a very old system and instead modernizing our payment stack. And I think as an organization who knows airlines very well, payments is a complicated space. So we're lucky that one of our lead solution architects came from that industry, and we had a good idea of what we wanted to do. But fairly quickly, the pressure to deliver something quickly made us realize it was time to maybe go and look for a partner. And a partner that would help us achieve our goals without sort of seeing the project as a way to a multi-year maintenance contract. We didn't want to go back to what we had with just a different partner. We wanted to build something that would serve our needs well into the future, but also allow us control our own destiny.
Okay. Well, this doesn't sound like a plug and play to me. So you needed really some very experienced and dedicated people to help you out with that. So thanks for that, Dave. Vojin, over to you. If you look at Endava's perspective, how did you approach the project? And maybe you can shed some light on the before and after situation, more from a technical and process perspective.
Absolutely. So from Endava's perspective, I think when you look at the challenges in kind of, when you look at these kind of projects, from Endava's perspective, there wasn't that many challenges when it comes to integrating with the PSP, when integrating with the Apple Pay that they mentioned. Those are not the real challenges. The real challenges is understanding the airline environment, understanding the systems, because these are the systems that you're going to orchestrate. And of course, you need to understand what it is that airline wants to accomplish with the orchestrator. And to do that, really, you need to have all the business departments included. They've mentioned the architects also. These are really valuable insights that you get from all the business departments, because these are the people that are going to tell you, okay, these are the limitations of the systems. This is how it works today, and this is how it could and should work in the future. And then our goal really was to create a robust enough platform that can support the current state and then to cater for the future state. And I actually have two slides that I think really nicely demonstrate what it is that we found within Aer Lingus and then how we actually solved it. So if it's okay, I would like to share those.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so as Dave mentioned, you have this passenger service system that was built 50 years ago, and you can access it through various different channels. And this is not typical for Aer Lingus. This is what you would find in most of the airlines. But over the years, a lot of different systems were kind of built around the passenger service system, like revenue accounting, e-commerce. Everything was kind of bolted to the passenger service system. And the problem was that when the payment would come in, it would completely unnecessarily travel through all these different systems, leaving behind what is the sensitive data and also leaving behind the trail, which basically represents the payment infrastructure. And when we looked at this together, we said, in order to really have any kind of innovation, we need to somehow put this payment system in isolation. We need to somehow separate it from the rest of the systems. And this is how we basically did it. We cleaned up all the payment information from the rest of the systems, and we left only what was really essential for them to continue functioning, like where the payment came from, what was purchased, what was the payment method, and what was the price. And this new infrastructure that is not going through all these different systems and sending all the payment information unnecessarily enabled us to position the payment system in isolation. And now we can consolidate all the payment-related processes into one system. So the first project was Apple Pay. And what we really had to do is we had to communicate with the Apple Pay, Aer Lingus' team enable it on their digital channels, and we reused this new pipeline to basically tell the system, hey, payment happened on the mobile, and it was Apple Pay. And this was the first time where we proved that this infrastructure is going to work and it's going to be a future-proof. And now, this opened up a whole new way of possibilities. Now we were able to move vouchers, we were able to move DCC, we were able to even add Avios that they mentioned as a way of payment. The main point here is that all the innovation really happened from the payment system. And the infrastructure that was involved in the other systems, I think now, Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think 3.5 years, 3 years, nothing changed in the infrastructure, which means we really built something that is future-proof and that can take on all the innovation in payments. So that's basically what I wanted to share, and hopefully this illustrates the point.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's always good to see that visualized. And so Dave, if you look back at the project and the goals that you had set for yourself, when you started the project, from a return on investment perspective, from a result perspective, where do you stand now, and how do you see this moving forward to the future?
Yeah, so just before I even answer that, Paul, I just want to touch on one thing that Vojin mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
That challenge of deployment was really keeping us awake at night. So this was a really seismic change to our main revenue engine, and we couldn't afford to drop really a single payment as we deployed this project. But yet we have 13 different payment channels, all of which needed to get upgraded. So we came up with a fairly, I think, good way of rolling it out, and it was just in small incremental steps. So we started with Apple Pay. It was a new channel, so that there was no traffic on it. And we were able to specify through this payment hub, because of the way we had built it, that we could use Apple Pay, only supporting a certain card type. So for example, Visa card, only on a certain channel. By being able to configure the payment methods at that level of granularity, we were able to test out each card on a very throttled basis to make sure it worked, wait the number of days for the payment to flow through the various systems and the reconciliation, even try to do a refund, make sure everything worked before we opened up to more cards and more payment types. And that approach, while a bit slower, made our sleep patterns a lot better over the 6 or 9 months that we rolled it out, because we weren't left with that horrible scenario of we can't take payments. Mm-hmm. And that felt a lot more real in 2019 than obviously it would today.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned to me before that to cut it up in digestible pieces, it makes it easier to handle and not so intimidating, like you just mentioned. Okay, that's very clear. Thank you very much. So Vojin, back to you. If we look at all the work you've done, and also then with the ongoing challenges in the landscape when it comes to regulations or technology, or the dealings that we have all with COVID-19 and having to have like a multi-vendor platform to deal with business continuity, how do you see from an Endava perspective the future for yourself, but definitely also for Aer Lingus moving forward?
Yeah, so from Endava perspective, we are a technology company, right? So we're not a bank, we're not a PSP. So we look at it a little bit differently from other vendors. So we look at it from terms of payments, in terms of technology, and in terms of industry. So in terms of payments, now being part of Endava company, we have a lot of access to a lot of different building blocks. And now it's just a matter of, picking the right building blocks that we can employ that makes a real business sense for the airline. Things like virtual cards, things like closed loop payments for the online travel agents, smart routing, things like that will add real business value. In terms of technology, Aer Lingus pre-COVID had 12 million passengers, if I'm not wrong, per year. And over the 3 years, we accumulated a lot of different data on top of which can now apply different technology components. Things like machine learning and AI, so we can have some valuable insights. Things like robotic process automation, so we can now automate a lot of processes. And all the different things that make sense, right? So we can pick from our toolbox and we can employ what makes sense. And from the industry perspective, we need to make sure that we have ready teams that can help airlines in terms of NDC one order, in terms of health passports. These are all the things that we need to make sure, and we do, that we have people ready to jump on and help the airline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. You touched on NDC in one order. That's also one of the changes that are coming up, of course. We're just looking back. I think payment orchestration is also about harmonization and making sure that you take the pain points away. I think you clearly have done that. So looking at at the questions coming in. I have a question here. What do you see as the evolution for wallets such as Apple Pay for airlines? Are there any future ancillary opportunities? Aer Lingus obviously made Apple Pay a focus point. How do you see that being used in the future as well, further than that?
So I mean, I think more broadly, this pandemic has accelerated the innovation in the payment space. People are really moving away from cash in a dramatic way over the last 12 months and looking for alternative forms of payment. I mean, Apple Pay, personally, I find fantastic. I find the fact that you can use it offline as well as online to be incredibly helpful. You can, you can go for a jog with your watch, have no phone, and still, get a drink in the shop at the end of it. So that's interesting from an ancillaries and onboard perspective. But more broadly, IATA are looking at IATA Pay. There's many different ways to pay that go beyond the traditional merchant service fees and traditional credit card companies. And as open banking comes along, we feel with this payment hub now created, we're in a position to jump on that opportunity whenever we really want, quite quickly. And particularly the whole area of sort of smart routing and making sure we're looking at the data coming through, as Vojin mentioned, before we take payment. And then we're deciding the best way to take payment that maximizes the revenue for ourselves and minimizes the cost for our customers. So I think it's a fast evolving space, and probably for the first time in a long while, we're ready to jump on the latest innovations as opposed to be sort of several iterations behind because we haven't jumped out of the legacy tech.
You made this point about open banking, online banking payments. Is that something that in your home market or in your key markets is already picking up any speed? Can you see that?
So in the Irish market, the PSD2 introduction a while ago has made that much more available, but it's been fairly slow to become prevalent. I think it's progressing quite a bit more in the UK market, and certainly in the European markets where there's much more focus on other types of payment, such as direct debit or whatever else. That opens those doors to us. Of course, in the US, it's less relevant at the moment, but at the same time, there's a lot of payment innovation in the US too that I think we should be keeping an eye on.
Okay.
So maybe to add on that.
Sorry, go ahead, Vojin.
Yeah, maybe just to add to what Dave said, I think it's really important that, as Dave mentioned, the COVID made everyone react. And I think with the strong foundation that we built really creates a solid foundation where you can be reactive and proactive, actually. You can see the trends and you can be proactive and do certain things that make sense immediately. So you don't need to wait. I think in the COVID, everything was pushed pushed, even the PSPs and the providers, everyone was really pushed to the limit to support this. But now when you have a strong foundation, you can actually have different building blocks that make sense. And that part of integrating new payment methods, that part is really easy. We can just pick and integrate it. Once you have a strong foundation that can actually pull all the things together, now it's easy, really. It's just a matter of what makes the business sense.
Okay. So we have 2 minutes left. Maybe I have a couple more questions, and one maybe very quickly, Dave. It's a question about if IAG Aer Lingus is looking into creating its own coins or cryptocurrency. Maybe a yes or no answer.
I have nothing to share on that at this point.
Okay, well, that's also an answer. Okay, maybe some then, Vojin, any closing remarks from you before we end the session?
So I think there are a couple of takeaways that I would definitely like to highlight. So I think, as Dave mentioned, we had a really good luck in terms of collaboration, in terms of really approach to this project. When you're approaching this kind of a project, and Paul, you would know, you would include it in this kind of projects. Rather than go with a big bang, we went with a phased approach and we involved all the departments, and we have a wonderful collaboration. And this is what enabled us to really have a predictable roadmap, to know exactly what projects will come next and to have control over it. Because it's really hard to know all the things for the project in 3 years, what is going to happen. And this kind of approach allows you to pivot when needed and to make slight adjustments when they're needed. And this was really important and crucial. But actually, in terms of a closing remarks, I would just say that I'm really looking forward now, when we have this rebound period, to see what we're going to do together in the following year. And maybe next year on the World Aviation Festival, we can again join and share what we did.
Sounds like a plan. Hope to be back there as well in person. Dave, any closing remarks from you?
No, just thanks for the invitation, and delighted to share a little bit about our journey.
Okay, well, it was a great journey, and hopefully it will continue on schedule. Thanks both Vojin and Dave for your input here, and looking forward to the rest of the payment track. So thanks guys, and speak to you later.